Top 5 American killers that still haven't been caught. The Long Island serial killer. He is believed to have murdered at least 10 people in the Long Island area between 2007 and 2010. Despite an extensive investigation involving multiple law enforcement agencies, the Long Island serial killer has not been caught. One of the reasons the killer has eluded capture is the lack of forensic evidence and the fact that the victims' bodies were often dismembered, making identification and cause of death more difficult. If you have the guts, follow for the next serial killer.
These are killers that were never caught, part 1. Up first is the Axeman of New Orleans. If you watched American Horror Story Coven, then you are definitely familiar with him. He was an active serial killer from 1917 to 1919 who brutally attacked 12 men and women with an axe. The Axeman famously sent letters to the newspapers claiming he would spare any house that played jazz music loudly. He was never caught and nobody knows who he ever was. Next up is the Cleveland Torso Killer. This unidentified serial killer killed at least 12 people. He would then dump his victim's body in a creek, and the bodies were also limbless and headless, giving this killer the title of the Torso Killer. This killer was never caught, and to this day, nobody knows who it was.
How many people do you think you've killed overall?
I've been in the game for a long time, more than 70 probably.
I mean, I'll have to ask you, what was the most violent thing you've done yourself?
I was taking 2 recruits to do a task that was given to us. These recruits obviously were new, they didn't know what they were doing. They got nervous, they came back into the car and they told me that the people that were there were armed. We pull up near this person, and this person is obviously a rival. The person in the back seat, I was driving, the person in the back seat pulled out a rifle and shot him. He missed the shot, but injured him on the leg. At this moment, the rifle jammed. The recruit was panicking. I jumped out of the car, took the rifle, busted the bullet out and cocked it back in, and I shot him again. This person was still agonizing, trying to drag himself through the pavement. The rifle jammed again, so I basically went up to him and smashed him with the butt of the rifle until his head exploded, and that was it. Jumped back in the car and left. Obviously, there's more things that I've done I'm not willing to discuss at the moment.
Top 10 most notorious serial killers in the world. 10. Jeffrey Dahmer, 17 victims. 9. Ted Bundy, 30 victims. 8. John Wayne Gacy, 33 victims. 7. Alexander Pichushkin, 49 victims. 6. Andre Chikatilo, 53 victims. 5th. Yong Shinei, 67 victims. 4th. Daniel Camargo Barbosa, 72 victims. 3rd. Pedro Lopez, 110 victims. 2nd. Luis Garvito, 138 victims. 1st. Harold Shipman, 230 victims.
These are active serial killers who haven't been caught yet, part 1. Up first is the I-70 Killer. The I-70 Killer is an unidentified American man who killed 6 store clerks across the Midwest in 1992. Victims were typically young women who were petite and brunette. The one male victim had long brown hair which he often wore in a ponytail, so it is theorized that this killer mistook him for a woman from a distance. Also, the I-70 Killer is suspected to be behind 2 more murders in 1993, an attempted murder in 1994, and 1 more in 2001. His only surviving victim is 35-year-old Vicky Webb. She briefly talked to him before he shot her, but he just left her there for dead, and the bullet didn't properly penetrate her, and she survived. Next up is the Long Island serial killer, also known as the Craigslist Ripper. This person is believed to be active from 1996 to 2010. Authorities came to this conclusion after 10 bodies were found on the Long Island coast between 2010 and 2011. There are 8 other potential victims, some of whom have never been identified. Most of the victims were known to sell adult services on Craigslist, and several people have been suspected of being the Long Island serial killer, like this man, John Bitrolf. He has been charged with 2 confirmed murders, but is suspected for another 15 to 20. making him the #1 suspect of being the Long Island serial killer.
While awaiting trial in Colorado, Bundy managed to escape custody not once, but twice.
He lost weight. He was able to move aside a neon light fixture, slid up through the ceiling, went over to the ceiling of a closet into the jailer's home.
His second escape in December 1977 led him to Florida.
Serial killers love being at the heart of the drama that's unfolding around them. When Bundy moved to Florida,
where he unleashed his most brutal attacks, on January 15, 1978, Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University.
About 3 o'clock in the morning, a young woman named Nita Neary was returning to her sorority house. She entered the downstairs. She saw a man run out of the house carrying what appeared to be a stick in his hand.
He savagely attacked 4 women and killed 2 of them.
Cue the chilling tales of the top 10 most feared serial killers in history. At number 10, we have the infamous Zodiac Killer, who evaded capture with his cryptic messages. Next up, we have Richard Ramirez, whose reign of terror kept Californians on edge in the mid-80s. Our 8th spot belongs to Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer. Number 7 is the BTK Strangler, Dennis Rader, whose taunting letters stunned the world. Our 6th spot is held by John Wayne Gacy, a real-life killer clown. Number 5 introduces us to Ted Bundy, a charming yet deadly predator. At number 4 is Charles Manson, the mastermind behind a murderous cult. The 3rd spot goes to Jeffrey Dahmer, the notorious Milwaukee cannibal. At number 2 we have Aileen Wuornos, a rare female serial killer. And finally at number 1, the most feared of them all, Andrei Chikatilo, the butcher of Rostov. And there you have it, a chilling countdown of the top 10 most feared serial killers in history. Remember, sometimes the real monsters are not under your bed. They are walking amongst us.
Inside the mind of Albert Fish, in the midst of the bustling metropolis of New York City, a sinister figure lurked in the shadows, preying on innocent victims. His name was Albert Fish, one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. Born in 1870, Albert Fish endured a childhood filled with abuse and trauma. His father's sudden death left the family destitute, forcing Fish into an orphanage where he faced unimaginable cruelty. It was during these formative years that Fish's twisted fantasies began to take shape. He developed a fascination with pain and suffering, finding pleasure in inflicting harm on himself and others. As he grew older, Fish's depraved desires only intensified. He became a drifter, wandering from city to city, leaving a trail of violence and depravity in his wake. But it wasn't until the 1920s that Fish's reign of terror reached its peak. He targeted young children, luring them away with promises of candy and affection, only to subject them to unspeakable horrors. Fish's crimes shocked a nation and baffled law enforcement. His ability to evade capture for so long earned him the nickname the Gray Man, a reference to his unassuming appearance and elusive nature. But it was his final act of depravity that would cement his place in infamy. In 1934, Fish was arrested for the kidnapping and murder of 10-year-old Grace Budd. One authorities discovered would send shockwaves through the nation. Fish confessed to not only Grace Budd's murder but to numerous other killings and heinous acts of cannibalism. His chilling confession sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. Today, Albert Fish remains one of the most infamous figures in criminal history, a twisted embodiment of humanity's darkest impulses. His story serves as a grim reminder of the depths of human depravity and the enduring quest for justice in the face of unspeakable evil.
Jack the Ripper remains one of history's most infamous serial killers, haunting the back alleys of Victorian London in 1888. His identity was never discovered, which only fueled the public's fascination and fear. The Ripper's crimes began in August, targeting women in Whitechapel, a district rife with poverty and despair. The first canonical victim, Mary Ann Nichols, was found brutally murdered, leading to widespread panic among the local populace. Over the next few months, 4 more women met similar fates, each murder characterized by horrific mutilations and an unsettling precision that hinted at the killer's dark expertise. The press sensationalized the events, dubbing him Jack the Ripper after a letter, purportedly from the killer, was sent to the police. This moniker captured the public's imagination, turning the Ripper into a figure of both horror and intrigue. Investigators struggled to find leads, and the case became a media frenzy, highlighting the social issues of the time, including the plight of women in poverty. The Ripper's legacy endures, not only as a chilling tale of murder, but also as a reflection of societal fears and the darker aspects of human nature.